we have a bit of a snooze there. Welcome to Automotive Carnage, and well, as you can see, we're kind of in the bush already, so we might as well go bush wreck hunting. There's a 38 Ford to start us off. Fantastic, it's a good day. Hello everyone, my name is DJ and welcome to another episode of Bush Wreck Hunters. Today we're going on an adventure along the rails. Well, the rails and the trains, they're long gone. They haven't been here since about 1957, but there are plenty of bush wrecks along here that we can still go and explore. Before we get into it though, I just wanted to address a few questions that I've been asked recently. Two prominent ones come to mind. The first one being, where are the cars? Where is X car? Where is Y car? Well, quite frankly, I'm not going to tell you. A lot of these vehicles are on private property or mining leases, and it's only because I have a good relationship with the people who own the land or lease the land that I'm allowed to go and actually look at these vehicles and film them to present to you guys. What I will say though, and a lot of people have picked it out already, is I do live in the goldfields of Western Australia. So that gives you a bit of an idea on where we're hunting. And the second question is, can you just take these cars out of the bush? Well, the short answer is no. It's because I have a relationship with the station owners and the lease owners that I'm allowed to do what I do. If you do want particular parts or there are vehicles that you do have interest in, please get hold of me and we'll be able to negotiate something to get these vehicles back on the road. With all that being said, let's go find some more vehicles. Alright, here we are at our first car. It's a first generation Mitsubishi Magna. Now, although a relatively plain vehicle, this was actually a huge step for Mitsubishi in Australia back in the day. See, Mitsubishi had just taken over from Chrysler in 1980, and this was their first locally made vehicle. Now, they had the Sigma, which was getting long in the tooth, and they needed something modern to replace it with, and this was their answer. What they did effectively was got the 5th generation Sigma, the first of the front wheel drive ones from Japan, and then widened it. It wasn't big enough for the Australian market, so they put an extra 65 millimeters of width down the center of the car. Now, there's a little bit of contention as to why they did this. Some people say it was to accommodate the Australians' buying habits, or some say it was to fit the larger 2.6 litre 4G54 engine. The truth, well, no one really knows. It's kind of up in the air, but we ended up with a pretty significant vehicle for Mitsubishi at the time. Another interesting fact, Magna was derived from the Latin term magnus, which means big. So they just kind of followed the whole wide theme the whole way through. Interestingly enough, this habit of taking a Japanese vehicle and making it wider actually caught on to the Japanese manufacturers. See, Toyota was the next one who really did it with their Camry in 1991 and made the XV10 chassis, which was the first of the wide body Camrys that we now know today. Now, in the first generation of Mitsubishi Magnas, there was 3 versions. You had the TM, which came out first. As I said before, notorious for poor quality of cylinder heads and automatic transmissions, but luckily they fixed that in the TN and the TP. Now, to find out which one we have, the easiest way to tell, especially on a car that's as destroyed as this one, is we'll go around to the back and find out where the license plate was mounted up. So the quickest and easiest way to tell you've got one of the earlier first generation Mitsubishi Magnas is look at where they put the rear license plate. On the very early ones, the TMs, they put the license plate between the tail lights on the actual bevel panel. On the subsequent TN and TP facelifts, this license plate holder was moved down into the bumper. Why? Well, that's up to the engineers in Mitsubishi to know. Anyway, that's enough of this vehicle. Let's move on to our next one, which is also one of the first of its kind. So the next car we find here as we carry on our journey following the railway track behind us is a 1991 EB Falcon. Now, the EB Falcon was a revision of the earlier EA, obviously, and what changes did they make? Well, they moved the Ford badge from up here down to there, and that's about it. Seriously, they redesigned not very much on this car. They moved the badge location, they got rid of the vents on the C-pillars, and a few other bits and pieces. So, why did I say this is the first of its kind when it's just a revision model? Well, the EB Falcon was the first time that Ford offered a V8 option since 1982. That's right, they brought the 5 litre V8 Windsor back for this car. Now, does this particular one have that engine? This particular one's got absolutely no engine at all. So, according to the engine code on the tags, this was a 3.9 litre EFI engine. Now, the other thing that Ford did when they released the EB was that pretty much they kept the same engine, they kept the same driveline as the EA. The only major change, as I said, was those styling cues and the fact that they now offered a V8 engine. So here's a bit of an interesting one. We have a FJ55 Land Cruiser. Now these were made from about 67 to 1980, so they had quite a decent run on them. And they were made specifically for the North American and the Australian market. It's actually the first time that Toyota had made the station wagon style of Land Cruiser. And yeah, this is what started it. Now these originally came with a 3.9 litre F engine, and in 1975 that was upgraded to the 2F, which was a 4.5. And depending on what model you had a 3 or a 4-speed manual transmission. Now a lot of the running gear and underpinnings were based on the earlier 40 series Land Cruiser, which was a fantastic off-road vehicle. The primary goal with this one though was to make it a bit more comfort oriented for the Australian and North American market. So let's jump underneath here, check the tag out, see what year this particular one is and see which engine it had. Alrighty, so after doing a little bit of digging around in the engine bay here, unfortunately someone has already taken the tag, so we'll never know for sure exactly what year or what engine this particular FJ55 had. But looking at it, it looks like it's the revised version that came after 1975, so this would have had the 2F engine, in my opinion anyway. Alright, let's move on to the next vehicle, which is even hard to identify. I'm going to need your guys' help to figure out what it is. So this old girl has definitely seen better days. It's been pillaged for a lot of its parts, and rust has unfortunately got into a majority of its body. And yeah, it's all been crushed in quite bad. So what I do know is it's a Falcon. It had the straight 6 in there, but exactly which model, well, I'm not too sure. So maybe you guys might be able to identify it a bit better. But yeah, the way it is at the moment, I can't get to the tags, and it's a little just too disfigured for my knowledge to figure out exactly what model it is. Anyway, let's carry on up the road here and see what else we can find. And with that, it brings us to our last car of the day, this Datsun 200B station wagon. Now, when these came out, they became Australia's best-selling 4-cylinder car, and they were everywhere. People loved them. They were only taken off that position by the Mitsubishi Sigma. Now, these first came into Australia in 1977, and those early ones were fully imported from Japan. It wasn't until 1978 that local production finally began. Now, due to federal laws at the time, they had to use 85% Australian content, which means that the sedans and the coupes went from independent rear suspension to the same live axle setup that the station wagons had. Now you'll think this would hinder the performance and handling of the vehicle, but being in Australia at the time, in the rough conditions and the horrible roads, it actually improved the stability quite a lot. So there is a possibility for this station wagon to be an early import, and to check that, we need to check the tag down here. And this one was made in the 4th month of 1978, making this an Australian produced car. Now what's really interesting is they must have shared the same tooling with Japan, because you still have room up the front here for the fender mounted mirrors. So thank you very much for coming along on this railway journey with us. But we got to see a model that was very important to Mitsubishi's history. We got to see one of Australia's best selling vehicles, along with a vehicle that was designed specifically for Australia in the FJ55. So I hope you stick with us for the next episode of Bushwreck Hunters, where we go out and we find even more vehicles in this great open land that is Australia.